Welcome everyone into another episode of Zoom Action, KSR's basketball film breakdown show. As always, I'm your host, Zach Gagan, joined by my co-host, Brandon Ramsey, who is in a undisclosed location in Indiana. He's got the perfect mic set up. He's ready to get the Final Four shirt on, the On3 hat. I'm rocking the Grand Canyon t-shirt because we're just representing everything we can today. But we've got a special episode in store for everyone. We did all our positional breakdowns. We covered the front court, the backcourt, the wings. That's all on our YouTube channel. You can go look at that if you want. So for our next episode, we decided to ask our fans, the viewers, what do they want us to talk about? So we took to KS Board, KSR's message board, and we asked just a simple question: what do you want to hear us talk about? So we have compiled about 8 questions here from different users. I think that only one person got a repeat or got 2 questions in. So shout out to For Love of the Game. Actually, you'll hear his name. He's one of my favorite posters on KS Board, but he has a couple of good questions. We got some really good ones here, but we're just going to kind of go run through them 1 through 8 here. Some of them, actually most of them, don't really have film that we are going to go with. It's more just going to be like an open discussion type thing of me and Brandon just bouncing back and forth of what we've seen throughout the film. But there are a couple of questions where we actually will pull up some film and kind of break it down a little bit more. So Brandon, we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it. Our first question comes from Connor R., our very regular KS Board poster. Big fan of his as well. He is always bringing the heat. He asks, which incoming player's film surprised you the most? And I was a big fan of this question because you've got 6, 7 newcomer guys, if you include the freshmen as well. So, Brandon, let's just jump right in. Who, when you've watched all the film so far of all the incoming players, newcomers, I should say, who stood out to you the most, would you say?
I think it's Jelavic, to be honest. I think that he is probably the most intriguing of the incoming guys, and part of that might be because he also might have kind of the most unknowns, just because he's coming, from international basketball. Like, how does it translate from the Adriatic League to the Southeastern Conference? We have seen, even over just the last couple of weeks, like, it seems like all of his teammates are now going to be playing college basketball.
The entire team. There's 6 of them now. 6 of them.
Yes. Yeah. Which, like, I think probably is a good thing. Like, that kind of shows that, like, it's not like we're the only ones kind of taking a flyer here. It seems like other coaches across the country think that these guys are pretty darn good and can help their respective programs as well. But I just watch him as he's going to be 21 years old. He's played legitimate professional basketball. As I've talked about before, the Adriatic League is like a top 8 to 10 league in the country. Now, there's some context to that. Like, quite frankly, the Southeastern Conference is better than the Adriatic League. So, like, in terms of professional leagues, it's pretty darn good, but it's probably still not as good as, like, the best even college basketball conferences in America. But it's still, it's a real, high level of basketball. And when you have a guy that is, 6'10", that can move as fluidly as he moves in the open floor. And, obviously you can go back on the KSR YouTube channel. Stephen Peak actually just poked his head in the window and said, go subscribe. We didn't mention that off the top.
Is over there. I forgot to. Yeah, sorry, Steven, I got you. We got you. Coming soon.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we're almost there. So help get us there by liking, commenting, and subscribing on the KSR YouTube channel. But you can go back and watch our front court breakdown. Obviously, we go more in depth on Jelavic and what he can bring. But I just think that with his size, with his mobility, the way he runs the floor, some of the versatility. This is a guy that can step out and make threes. I think that he can block some shots. He's rebounded at a high level there in the Adriatic League. I think he was one of the top, if not the top, rebounders on his team. He averaged like 7.5. Yeah, like 7.5 rebounds a game. I think this past season. So I just think that, yes, there's maybe other than Jasper Johnson, I think that Jelavic is probably the guy where, like, there's so many different outcomes and none of them would shock me. Like, is he not ready to play? That wouldn't completely shock me. Is he, like, one of the best players on the team and a borderline first-round NBA draft pick after this season? That wouldn't shock me either. I think there's just so many things on film with him, watching him against other grown men, other professionals, and again, with that versatility, with the athleticism that he brings to the table, I'm really, really excited to get a better feel for how that translates, to Kentucky and to the Southeastern Conference and to high major basketball in general.
Yeah, like you were saying, he's got all his teammates are coming with him. All the 20, 21, 22-year-olds are coming with him. I think you've got one going to Auburn, one's following Jay Lucas to Miami. I know there's Illinois got one. Illinois has the entire Adriatic League just like on their roster right now. Like they've got the whole, all of those guys.
They're pretty much a like European professional team.
Yeah, the whole Balkan team is just like made up of Illinois basketball. So obviously they've got something good cooking over there at Mega Basket. That's the same program that also produced Nikola Jokic. He was there for 2 years as well, or maybe 3 years. Jokic was there, so that's also notable. And I think just looking at pure stats, Jelavic was like the second leading scorer of all these guys that are coming over from that team. I think the guy that's going to Auburn scored like 12 points a game. Jelavic had 10 points a game. So like comparatively, you've got a lot of really good talent coming over from that one program. So we'll see how it all translates. I'm actually very interested to follow all of the, I think it's 5, it might be 6 guys, 5 or 6, to see how they all perform next season, because that could be kind of telling how teams maybe approach that program going forward overseas and all that. So, but yes, Jelavic is obviously a great choice. I went with Dioubate, Mo Dioubate. Mainly because when you look at the stats, the first thing you think of when you get, or the first thing that happens when you get these new commits and like start hearing of the possibilities, it's like, okay, so what are the numbers? That's the first thing you do is you look at their basketball reference page, and obviously Mo Dioubate is not putting up crazy numbers. Didn't start, averaged like 16 minutes a game. But then when you watch the film, you're like, okay, this is why this guy was so key to 2 straight Elite 8 runs, one of them being ending in a Final Four as well. Like you understand just how important he is, and we're actually going to talk about him a little bit more later in another question, but his defense, just his attitude, his physicality, all the little things that he brings are just, they really jump off the page or the screen whenever you're watching the film. Not someone like we've talked about before. We did the whole breakdown of not someone that we're really expecting to be like a offensive, fulcrum or anything like that, or someone who's going to make the offense go, but man, he's going to be hard to keep off the floor. And it's kind of funny that we both picked those 2 guys, because that's probably going to be the debate between the 4 spot. Is like, who gets the spot? It'll probably end up being either Dioubate or Jelavic. Like if you go look at random roster projections for Kentucky on whatever outlet or platform you're using, it's usually going to be one of those 2 guys filling in there. So it'll be interesting to see if Dioubate can take on maybe more of an expanded role and actually maybe play starter more minutes at Kentucky, which is 20, 22 minutes a game. But just watching the film, man, he's so much fun. Just really, really just a brick wall on defense. He's going to change the entire outlook of how Kentucky is viewed on that end of the floor, especially like in terms of the pick and roll. Like the pick and roll defense never really got that much better over the year or throughout the season. Dioubate is going to come in. He's going to be able to shore some of those issues up like almost immediately just by having all the experience and playing in that NATO system where they did a lot of like hard hedging and stuff like that. He's really quick to recover. He's just a fun guy to watch if you're just looking at defense on the film. He was really fun. So it'll definitely be interesting to see who kind of gets the first, like, I guess, stamp of approval from Coach Pope going into the season, because it'll probably end up being one of those 2 guys starting at the 4. We're going to move on to question number 2 here. I'm going to be honest, I have no idea how to say this guy's username. It's GUUBOI. So, Goo Boy. I don't know, Brandon. But he asked us, and this is an interesting question, because once I kind of dove into the numbers and stuff, I was like, I'll ask it here. How do you guys feel about Jayden Quaintance's post-up game? Brandon, I'll let you kind of go ahead and just give your initial reactions to that question.
Yeah, I think that he's supremely talented, and there are going to be times where you throw the ball to him in the post and he makes outstanding plays, because that's Jayden Quaintance. Like there's things that he will do that you cannot teach. He just does them because he's a future lottery pick, if not top 5 pick. Now, and I'll let you get more into this. You're the one that found the numbers, but Synergy from last year would paint a picture that is not super rosy when it comes to his efficiency as a back to the basket player. But I think I'll let you dive into more of that, but I'll touch on a couple of things first.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the end of the world, because let's face it, in 2025 in college basketball, what dominant offense can you think of that's like super heavy on one-on-one low post scoring? I mean, probably the
Well, at
team
times,
that did
Amari
it.
Williams thought he was good at that last season.
Yeah,
So,
right. Yeah. There were some times that, and honestly, he got much better at it throughout the year. But like,
yeah.
you think about the offenses that are most, post oriented. Like, do we want to be Hunter Dickinson in Kansas? Like, that's what we're kind of talking about here. And obviously, he's not going to have that level of usage in the low post. But so, I don't think that it's like super important for him to be a stud with his back to the basket. But I also think, though, that where he does flourish offensively, um, in transition, his transition numbers on synergy are pretty darn good because he's so good on the rim run and he's so athletic. I think he'll probably be better on the roll than maybe Amari Williams and Brandon Garrison were at least last year, just kind of more comfortable and again, just kind of skilled and has some innate traits to him there. But then also just kind of in isolation. And this is something with synergy that it's not perfect in terms of like how it always pinpoints like what a possession is. So I think there's going to be times where you throw it to Jayden Quaintance and like he might have his back to the basket, but then he faces up to something you and I talked about earlier today, Zach. Like, okay, is that a post up? Is that isolation? Is that like a drive? I don't really know how synergy, parses those out on a possession to possession basis, but I do think that is where you'll see him score some. Is like just get him the ball at 10 feet against maybe a little bit smaller defender or a guy that's slower or whatever it may be. And he'll be able to, with his skill and quickness and athleticism, he'll be able to score like that. But are we going to be, Hunter Dickinson, Zach Edey, throwing it into the post 30 times a game? Shaq, this is going to be a Shaq offense.
Yeah.
And I think that's totally fine. And Coach Pope's never going to probably play that way. He's going to want to continue to invert some things offensively a little bit more. So is Jayden Quaintance this old school back to the basket interior scorer? No. Does he have some skills that I think will allow him to be further along earlier in the year than maybe Amari Williams was in terms of like, okay, we're going to run something to score it in the post? Yes, I think he has some more skill in order to do that. But Zach, as you'll talk about here, it is an area probably for growth for Jayden Quaintance. And let's remember, every stat that comes up with Jayden Quaintance is when he was 17 years old.
Yeah.
So we do need to kind of, always remind yourself of what we're talking about when we're talking about Jayden Quaintance's freshman year.
Yeah, also playing on a bad Arizona State team. So we
Yes.
do have the synergy numbers here. He's credited with 27 post-ups on the season. He played 25 games. So he's credited with about one per game. When I was watching the film, one thing I'll notice is he does like to try and get the ball about 10, 12, 15 feet away from the basket with his back to the basket. But almost every single time he does, he's turning around. He's getting himself into almost like spot up. Like he's in a triple threat position at that point, and that's where he wants to go work. So I doubt Synergy probably counts those up as post ups. But yeah, when he is doing the post ups, his points per possession is 0.667, which is below average as it ranks. So it's not very good. But I don't think, like you're saying, I don't think there's going to be a lot of scenarios where he's really like kind of asking for the ball, like 5 feet out of the block within Pope's offense. I just don't think that'll happen all that often. Could he get himself like we saw with Amari Williams? And maybe my mind is just like playing tricks on me, but it almost felt like Amari was doing a lot of his like, I'm pretty sure we even talked about it on Zoom action, where like he would get the ball on the perimeter and then just kind of like turn around and back his way like all the way down in there. And he would almost do that sometimes just because like sometimes nothing else was working. It was almost like out of a necessity, especially when all those injuries were really kicking in and like kind of the middle to the late SEC season. So it could be a thing that we maybe see more, but I'm not expecting to see too much post ups from Jayden Quaintance just because you're going to have so many other options around him that should be kind of like a last resort thing. But I do think you'll see him obviously get the ball at the top of the key more often, and that'll put him more of a triple threat position where he can be a facilitator as opposed to actually being a pure back to the basket guy. Because I just don't think that's his game. And like you said, that's not really what we're playing in modern basketball. And yeah, you definitely don't want to be what Kansas did last year. Like that was kind of a disaster. So, but Kentucky should have more shooting than Kansas did. But that's different besides the point. So, so not great on the post up, the numbers at least for him. Oddly enough, though, like post ups including passes is what Synergy says. He's much better at that in terms of the point in terms of the the ranking or whatever that Synergy gives him. So whenever he's in position to post or pass the ball out of post ups, his his points per possession does tick up a little bit. So maybe that is something to keep in mind. Let's go on to our next question here. Again, people with these usernames of just random letters that I'm not really sure how to say. IBCPA, Ibsica, IBCPA, maybe it's CPA related. I don't know, Brandon. But he or she asked us, can you go in depth on how Jayden Lowe can be more of a floor general compared to a scorer? And for this one, we actually do have some film. While I pull that up, Brandon, why don't you kind of go ahead and give me your general thoughts on Jaylen Lowe as a playmaker compared to a scorer, because it definitely feels like playmaking is going to be more in his game next season than it was at armpit, as Nick Rush appropriately called them last season.
Yeah, I mean, we know what Jaylen Lowe did as a scorer last season at Pitt, but let's not forget he also averaged 5.5 assists per game. That was a big reason why he was an All-ACC performer last year as a sophomore. So I think that just that in and of itself should tell you what type of playmaker this guy can be. And in some of these clips that we're going to watch, let's just say he easily could have had more than 5.5 assists per game if his teammates didn't stink, because there's a lot of open shots that just don't go in that I think will go in at Kentucky, just with the space that you're going to play in, just having more talent, quite frankly, on the perimeter around him as well. And one of the things that really stands out to me when evaluating Jaylen Lowe's film from Pittsburgh is the fact that it's easy to get caught up in how explosive he is, because he is really, really explosive. Like, this is a guy that can go end to end with a ball in his hands like that. Like, he is really fast end to end. He can get downhill in a hurry and explode to finish at the rim. However, it's not just straight line explosiveness with Jaylen Lowe. That's one of the things I really like about him. He plays with really, really good pace, especially in ball screen situations where he can kind of get a guy on his hip and keep him on his hip to then probe in there and make plays out to the perimeter. There's a miss, should have been an assist. But then he'll slow down in order to speed up and explode past somebody. That's something that, to me, you really have to look for these super quick, super explosive point guards. Are they sort of out of control with their athleticism, or do they harness it and still play with pace even while still being explosive? And I think that's one of the really exciting parts about Jaylen Lowe as a playmaker, is I think you'll see him, again, especially in ball screen situations, but also some in isolation or in the open floor, where it's not just bull in a china shop. He can really change speeds well, and that allows him, I think, to process the game, to see the floor, to find open teammates. And again, you don't average 5.5 assists per game by accident. That means that he has some of that processing ability. That means he has the court vision. That means that he has the willingness to be a passer, and especially, again, with the talent that's going to surround him. Do I think he's going to average the 15, 16 points a game that he averaged at Pittsburgh last season? No, that would probably surprise me if he comes in and does that at Kentucky. But, like, could I see this guy leading the SEC in assists with like 7 a game? Like, it wouldn't shock me if his assist numbers actually go up. Again, just because he's playing with better players. And he's certainly going to play less minutes. He's certainly going to have, a lower usage rate, most likely. But again, I just think when you surround him with talent, you're just going to see his game unlock that much more. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I know people like to poke fun at the ACC, but this dude was an All-ACC player as a sophomore. To me, that should be very exciting when you can just plug and play that guy as your PG1 from day one, because he's proven at the high major level that he can do it with success. And I think that it'll only get better within Coach Pope's system.
Yeah, so watching Lowe, I think the first thing that I'll say about him is, after watching a bunch of film, is he really likes to get in the pick and roll. That's probably his best skill on offense, is like being able to navigate a pick and roll. I'm still not sure if he's a score first or a pass first guy. Like, it kind of feels like it comes and goes in waves. Like, if he feels like he needs to kind of take over late in games, he will. But he's really good at like slithering his way around, through defenses. Like, he's willing to make the easy play. Like, we've already seen a couple of times here. Like, he'll get himself into a mismatch up top. He'll direct he'll direct 2 guys around from the corner to the other side of the floor. to open up the strong side, and then that was like a kind of an example there, another miss as well. And get his teammates easy looks because he knows that if he's penetrating, he's going to draw some help. Just because of how dangerous he is as a penetrator. So I do think the I don't know what I'm even trying to say here. Let me just watch or show this play here. I think this one is one that I'm really like here as well. So he gets himself into a position here where he can get himself a mismatch up top. And what I was talking about here, he identifies the mismatch, gets an easy switch, directs two guys in the corner to go over to the other side of the floor. Then he's got the strong side. He's got a guy, Zach Austin, who was shooting pretty decent from three here. Like, just an easy play, no hesitation there. Obviously misses it, but you're going to get easy, clean looks like this. I think this is some of the stuff you're going to see from floor. And that was just a quick clip right there of Lowe penetrating. This is one of my favorite plays here. I use the term probing a lot, like kind of how, just for like a real, easy out of this realm example comparison is like Chris Paul loves to do this stuff when he gets in the lane. Just kind of like use his butt to like be like an extra, almost like wall for him, like so he can just force people off and make things a little bit easier for him here. So he gets himself into a position where he's got two guys on his back, and he's, mind you, Jaylen Lowe is a left-handed guy. Easily does a wraparound right-hand pass to a guy wide open who, can you guess what happens here, Brandon? He fumbles it and misses it. And Jaylen Lowe gets kind of understandably upset about this because it is annoying when that stuff happens. I don't think that stuff's going to happen nearly as much as at Kentucky. But he's very smart, very patient, not perfect. Like he will take some bad shots and stuff, or he did last season when he was at Pitt on a bad Pitt team. But again, right there, like, real easy, was not like hesitating or like overthinking things when he got into the lane. He plays off 2 feet well, so he's always leaving himself open for the pass. Gets himself into the lane, draws a bunch of attention, easy kick out. Who knows if he makes this 3 or not? Hey, look at that. They got one to go in. So his vision, his feel, I think, is really impressive. And like that's my hot take for, I don't even know if it's a hot take, but that's kind of like my summer take, is that Jaylen Lowe will lead the SEC in assists. He'll probably have to get around 7-ish, maybe more than that to make that happen. But I definitely think it's possible with how he plays things here, because it should in theory be easier Kentucky because he's going to have maybe some less eyes on him. So maybe that'll open up more opportunities for scoring, or maybe people or opposing defenses will be well aware of what, his capabilities when he gets into the rim, and maybe bring more eyes to him and he can kick things out a little bit easier. So I'm just very excited for Jaylen Lowe in general, because I do think he's going to be kind of one of the surprise players in the SEC this coming season. But yeah, so there's just some film examples. I know they wanted to see some film of that, actually, like, so you could see it and process it in real time. So, but here, I'm just going to watch this play and we'll kind of talk about it here in a second. Again, another situation where he gets himself into a pick and roll, wiggles his way through around his own defender, around his own teammate, around 2 defenders. Boom, easy pass into the corner, wide open shot. You imagine that's, Cam Williams or whoever you want it to be, even Jelavic, and like you're probably going to get a good look at 40% of the time that shot's probably going to go in. So yes, I think that Jaylen Lowe's floor generalness, whatever that even means, that was kind of like, while I was doing the film, I was like, I thought I knew what a floor general was, and then when I was starting to watch the film, I was like, okay, so what actually does like a floor general mean? And I guess it kind of just means, or at least the easy way, is just someone who directs the offense, like just a kind of like a second hand of the coach. So I think Jaylen Lowe's going to do exactly what Mark Pope wants him to. He was doing it pretty well with this Pitt team here. So bad Pitt team. So I've rambled on long enough. Brandon, you got any other thoughts on Jaylen Lowe as a playmaker?
The last thing I'll say, and this is something I've talked about for the last several years now, when as we do more and more of these videos with KSR, something I've always talked about is, to me, to have a really dynamic offense, you need 2 things. You need guys that draw help, and then you need to have guys that you can't help off of, meaning shooters. Jaylen Lowe, watch all these clips. He's attracting at least 2, a lot of times 3 defenders as he drives and gets into the paint. Well, generally speaking, Kentucky's going to have enough shooting on the floor that you can't help off of 2 or 3 other guys to stop Jaylen Lowe. So now you put defenses in really tough decisions. Do you help less? And then that means that Jaylen Lowe, with how dynamic he is, he can get in there and go score it with his left. He can shoot a little floater, a little pull-up jump shot, get all the way to the rim where he finishes well with both hands. Or do you, collapse the help and make him make the extra pass, which he certainly is more than willing and able to do. And now all of a sudden he's, just dishing out assist after assist to shooters all game long. So yeah, I think that's really what you get in Jaylen Lowe is he's that guy. At another, Lamont Butler did a lot of really, really good things and was asked to do a ton, especially as the season went on for Kentucky. But it's going to be a different level of dynamic playmaking that it's just going to be so much easier for Jaylen Lowe to go get 2 feet in the paint and make that defense collapse than it was for anybody on Kentucky's team last season. And I think, with already building a Sweet 16 team last year as the injuries piled up, when you're starting with now a guy that's just a different level in terms of playmaking, that's pretty darn exciting if you're a Kentucky fan.
Yeah, kind of an extension of this. There was another question from Lurker Cat 22. Kind of asked how much better do you think this team will be at throwing lobs? Obviously, last season they didn't really do that at all. I think you're going to see kind of what Brandon was talking about from the defense's perspective of how do you guard Jaylen Lowe when he's surrounded by shooters. I think an easy answer for Jaylen Lowe and some of that will just be hitting easy lob passes. I think you're going to see probably a little bit more of that. You're going to see guys staying home on shooters a little bit more. And once he gets around the pick and roll and he's got one of those guys on his back, he's going to be very, very likely. It'll be a lot easier to just kind of toss that ball up there to, a Jayden Quaintance or Brandon Garrison and have them throw it down. I feel like there was one other thing I was going to say about Jaylen Lowe, but I'm blanking on it right now. So we'll go ahead and pass on to the next question here. This is a fun one. This is one that we're going to be talking about a lot, actually. Probably throughout the entire season until it either happens or it doesn't, because it was a conversation all last year. This comes from Andrew DYK. He asks, will we get to 33s per game this year with this roster? Brandon, will it happen? Pope talked about it again in his off-season press conference. He said that, yes, we want to get to that 33s again. He said that he failed at doing it last year. Is this a roster that you think can make it happen?
No. I'm just going to be pretty blunt with that. No, I do not expect this team to shoot 33-point shots a game. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, I was trying to pull it up, but I don't want to distract myself while I'm trying to talk. But I'm going to guess that 5 teams in the country did that last year, maybe 10. 3? Okay. That was a pretty good guess by me. So, we're talking about rarefied air here in terms of teams that shoot that many threes. Now, does that mean that we couldn't be one of them? Obviously not. We know we can be one of those 3 teams, but I don't see it happening because, again, I've been vocal about, do I have any worries about shooting this year? No, not necessarily. But it is, I think, the one area where we didn't clearly improve from 2024, 2025 to 2025, 2026. Again, does that mean I'm concerned about it? No, but do I think that we're a better shooting team on paper going into next year than we were last season? No, not necessarily. So therefore, I would be surprised if we shoot more threes. We played at a very high pace last season too. So if you weren't doing it there, I think Jaylen Lowe could maybe up that pace even a little bit more, but it's hard to play a ton faster than Kentucky played last year. So you're not necessarily going to generate more possessions or anything like that. And I think, not only were there only 3 teams last season that averaged 33s a game, according to Zach. But I think Kentucky shot 33s 5 times. I'm pretty confident in that. So, we weren't really all that close to averaging 33. So no, but again, and I'm not, making fun of the question here. I think it's a great question. It's one that's probably on top
Pope's
of
the one that keeps bringing it up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Pope's the one that talks about it. So there's nothing wrong with us, kind of asking for it when he's the one preaching it. But I also I don't think we need to get so hung up on it. And I would probably tell Coach Pope that, I guess. It's hey, why are we so obsessed with shooting 33s? We had a pretty darn good offense last year and we shot 25 threes. Does it, what's the magic in shooting 33s? And I think too, it's okay, well, if we have other strengths, I would rather like I don't want to shoot 33s for the sake of shooting 33s. Like if we're the best 3-point shooting team in the country, then I hope we shoot 43s. But like if we're shooting 34.7% from three, like I don't really want us to shoot 33s a game necessarily. So I wouldn't get overly worked up on it. And again, that's not to that's not to the asker of the question. That's kind of to BBN in general, and honestly, as much even to Pope as anybody else. It's like, okay, like why are we like why are we so obsessed with shooting 33s a game? I guess I kind of admittedly don't understand the fascination with that.
My guess would be it's just kind of the idea and the philosophy behind it is like, okay, you know, if we preach it into existence enough, if you get to that 25 number, it'll end up being okay. Because obviously that ended up being fine for Kentucky. They shot 25.3 threes per game last season, hit them at a 37.5% clip. Like those are really, really good numbers. I would say that, and some of it is like you said, like can you squeeze a few more possessions each game because you have a guy like Jaland Lowe running the show? Maybe. Probably not enough to make up an extra 5 3-pointers a game. I would say they probably hover in that 23, 24 per game range next season. And that 37.5% clip probably dips down to like 35-ish. But even then, I don't think that's a cause for concern at all because of everything else that we've talked about over the last however many months is everything else about this team should be improved. Pretty much every area outside of the 3-point shooting. So I think you can kind of sacrifice, a handful of threes per game if it is going to heighten everything else. And then Pope is in his 10th year. Yeah, so just finished his 10th year. And I did an article on this like a month ago. I forget the exact number, but I know that there was only one season that one of Pope's first 9 teams as a head coach hit that 30 threes per game number. I think there was one team, one of his BYU teams got to like 31 or 32 threes per game, something like that. And that team is pretty good, but you know, it's all situational stuff. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not worried about the 3-point shooting. I'm kind of with you in that boat. I do think it will be, I'm going to use this in air quotes, worse, because I just think last season's team I think the roster was just built to shoot more threes. Like, that's just how it was. I don't think this roster is going to be predicated on firing up as many threes as possible. There will be games where they shoot 33s per game. I can guarantee you that. Like, that will happen. But if they can shoot 23 a game and hit them at 35% clip and everything else that we've talked about kind of takes a step up, I think that's kind of like the sweet spot there. So, no, I'm with Brandon and probably most people I don't think most Kentucky fans are expecting this roster to shoot 33s per game because it really is like when you put it in the perspective of 3 teams did it last season. And I think one of them was like one of them might have been that Florida Atlantic or something like not even like I think only one Power 4 team shot 33s per game as well. So I could look that all up and but if I open up another tab right now, my computer will crash, so I'm not going to do that. But
and the other thing I want to say real quick on the, to I think, kind of answer my own statement a little bit of like, why does Coach Pope seem to mention this like every press conference? It is like, it's kind of a recruiting thing, honestly, because everybody wants to like it's the sexy thing to talk about. Like nobody wants to hear like, we're going to really grind it out this year. Like that's how we plan on winning. Nobody wants to hear, Buzz Williams talk about like, well, what we're actually going to do is we're going to miss shots so we can rebound 44% of them. Like that's not exactly what 5-star recruits want to hear. What they want to hear. And I remember Hoop Vision on YouTube, who's actually the guy that made the popular BYU video that we all watched when Coach Pope got hired. He always put out this thing of like, coaches introductory press conferences and like everybody like it doesn't matter if you got the Wabash job, the Kentucky job, the Florida A&M job. It's like, what are we going to do this year? We're going to play fast, man. We're going to shoot a bunch of threes. It's going to be an up-tempo, exciting style of play, baby. And then it's like, oh, we're shooting 19 threes a game. I thought we were going to play fast. Like it's kind of, I always, I say it to you guys. You probably know what I'm going to like, just because a coach says it doesn't mean it's true. And and as much as we love Coach Pope, like it was true with Coach Cal, it's true with Coach Pope too. There are a lot of times that coaches just say things because there's a microphone in front of their face They don't want to be there. Even as great as Coach Pope is with the media, he probably would just assume not talk as much as he does. So like he's just gonna say things to get through and to give Zach and all of our great writers at KSR some content to talk about for the week. Like that's just kind of what he's doing. So like yeah, like quite frankly, I don't want to like tell him he's lying, but like just because Coach Pope says he wants to shoot 33s a game doesn't actually mean that Coach Pope wants to shoot 33s a game. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Well, and he could even believe that. He could want to shoot 33s a game, but there's a difference between wanting to and actually.
Yeah, and then getting into the season and being like, hey, this is something we have to do.
Yeah.
Well, like we also want to be the best defensive team in the country, but we might not be,
But as the season went along too, and you have all these injuries going in and out, like, and you're kind of having Amari Williams just kind of be your point guard for half the season, it can make things like the fact that they shot 25 threes a game last season and shot it so well, I think is kind of extraordinary when we're going to look back at it, because like 37.5%, that's a top 30 clip in the country. You're shooting 25 threes a game. That's probably a top 50, top 75 mark. So you were arguably a top 5 most efficient team in all of college basketball shooting the 3-ball last year.
Right.
So that's just going to be hard to replicate, especially when you want to get better in so many other areas like they do. So, okay, that was a good question. Any other thoughts on that one? Coach speak is real. I think that's the takeaway from this. Is Coach speak is a real thing. So,
but no, let's get another question.
So now we're going to go to Big Blue Savant. I like this question because it's a little bit of a change of the normal question we normally get. Down by 1 at Florida, who is probably by all accounts going to be a top 5, top 2 preseason team. Down by 1 at Florida next season. 8 seconds on the game clock. Who are Kentucky's 5 players on the court? And the caveat here, who does Kentucky go to get themselves a bucket to win the game?
So I think that I'm going to go with my 5 being Jaland Lowe, Denzel Aberdeen, Otega Owe, Mo Dioubate. Honestly, the 5 spots
February, so you can assume that Quaintance is healthy.
Yeah. I mean, then this is probably the hardest one. Like, I probably would go Jayden Quaintance because I just think he's that talented. When in doubt, I think I'm going to want him on the court. And I'm as much of a Brandon Garrison guy as anybody. But I do think that Jayden Quaintance would be that 5th guy, if and when he's healthy. I go Aberdeen and Dioubate because they've been in that situation before. Yeah. Like, I mean, let's face it, Aberdeen was on the Florida team that we're talking about. And then, Dioubate is on, a team that's been, just as successful essentially over the last couple of seasons when he was in Tuscaloosa. So when it's winning time, I'm going to trust those guys as much or more than anybody else. And then Jaland Lowe and Otega Owe, to me, you're probably your 2 top minutes per game guys going into the season anyway. And then in terms of who's taking the shot, now I do, and this is something I like about Jaland Lowe, we already talked about it a little bit with his dynamic playmaking ability. He's probably your dude that, unlike last year, like it's like, hey, you can go like old school, like 4 low, everybody get, no pun intended with low, I guess. And like everybody get the heck out of the way, just go get a bucket, make something happen. Jaland Lowe's, better at that than anybody else on the team probably. But I do think Otega Owe is a borderline All-American going into the year. We saw him hit
winners.
He hit a couple of the biggest shots of the season last year for Kentucky. So especially if he makes some leaps in terms of, being a little bit tighter with the handle, maybe being a little bit more willing in a big situation like that to even, drive it in there and make a pass. Like if he can improve in those areas, then it'd be really hard to not have Otega Owe involved in a game-winning play like that, right? I mean,
yeah. And I think that's the entire, like that's the whole question is if Otega can make that playmaking leap where he becomes 15, 20% better at being able to navigate through pick and rolls and make smarter decisions, because as we've talked about, like he had moments late in games where he got tunnel vision. Jaland Lowe is he did the same thing as well, but you can kind of give him a little bit more leeway because who the hell is he going to pass the ball to? So I do think that, or who, at least with Pitt, it'll be different. Kentucky will have more options. So I do think that if you were asking me like if this game was being played today and like this is the versions of these players that we're gonna get right now, I do think that I would go. I'm with you on the same starting five or closing five
Yeah.
as well. I think that's like you've got two guys that have been in Final Fours. One won a damn championship. You've got a 5-star freshman or 5-star guy playing center. Like you've got an All-American on the wing. You've got an All SEC or All ACC. Like I think that's the easy pick for who you want out there, who you trust the most. But I would almost give the nod to Jaylen Lowe, even with Ortega having the history of scoring all those clutch buckets, because I think Jaylen Lowe just gives you more options in terms of what you can do. Like you said, if you want to put everyone at the baseline and just say, all right, Jaylen Lowe, go get us a bucket, guess what he can, because unlike Otega Owe, I trust Jaylen Lowe's mid-range jumper more than I do Otega Owe. And the one time you really want to have a mid-range jumper is closing time, when you need to go get a bucket and you just have to find a way to score. Like I trust Jaylen Lowe to be able to rise up and knock down a contested 17-footer more than I do Otega Owe right now. So that could all easily change. Otega could change things up. I just think Otega's shot's too slow to be able to warrant that. And he really wasn't. I don't know what Jaylen Lowe's mid-range stats were last season, but I know Otega's weren't that great. I can't imagine Jaylen Lowe's were that much better, for being honest, just because of the shot volume, the shot diet he had at Pitt. But I sent it to the group today with you and Steven. I said that was more for Steven. It was, hey, the last 5 minutes of this Syracuse game where they went into Syracuse, Jaylen Lowe took over in the final 5 minutes. He was the guy. He made a bunch of smart plays. He took one really bad three. Otherwise, though, he's making plays. He's getting to the rim. He's making layups, tough shots. Like he's just going to be a little bit like the options, the optionality, the versatility of how he can get you a bucket with 8 seconds to go. I think is the way you want to go, because if you can imagine, you've got Dioubate, under the basket, and then near the basket, and you've got Ortega and Aberdeen on the side, and then you pull up Jayden Quaintance to have a pick and roll or something like that. I just think you're going to have so many good options for Jaland Lowe in that situation, where he's going to be able to go make a play. So we'll see. I'm sure there will be situations next season where Kentucky has to go get a bucket. Both times, Pope went straight to Otega Owe, said, go get us a bucket, and he did. So if you're going to give Otega Owe the ball with 8 seconds to go, down by 1 against Florida next season, I'm not going to say a word, no matter what the end result is, because I trust him, you trust him, we all trust him to go make that play. It's just a matter of, can you get 5% more, can the percentage of success be 5% better with Jaylen Lowe doing that? I think so, probably right now, but this is all hypothetical stuff. Everything can change. A February game against Florida on the road is so long from now. It's crazy to think about, but it will be here before you know it. So that's fun. But yeah, any other thoughts you have on the closing 5 right there? And I think that's probably would be our starting 5 as well, more or less. I think we talked about maybe swapping out Dioubate and Jelavic. Like that could be a situational type thing, but I think it will be hard for that 5 to not be the starting 5 once Quaintance is healthy.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on. We've got 2 more questions here. You want to dive right into
Yep, let's bang them out.
All right, these are both from our guy, For Low the Game. Shout out to Kevin Costner, who was hanging out with Mark Pope and Mark Fox for whatever reason not too long ago. But so this one is actually a great question for Brandon, very on brand right now. And I like this one too, because I'm not really sure or what my answer will be to this question yet, even though I've looked at it 100 times. We're about to talk about it. Do you foresee this Kentucky team extending their defense to press a la Brandon's Pacers team this year?
Yeah, I think, we saw some of that from Kentucky last year. I mean, I think we ended up pressing, I don't know, like 3% of possessions, 4% of possessions, whatever it was, which I know that sounds really low, but for high major Division I basketball, like most teams do, like significantly less than that. So it was something like, whether it was out of a timeout or after free throws, a lot of times we'd pick up a little bit more full court. Again, could you see even more of that this year? Because you have a guy like Jaland Lowe who's like just so quick and he's nowhere near the defender that Lamont Butler was. No, but he does have but he does have that kind of like jitterbug, like he can sprint with you 94 feet and kind of stay on your hip and maybe make life hard for you. I think we'll be much more athletic at other positions as well. I think we'll be better on the back end, where if you got beat out of a press a little bit, you would have some athleticism and size, maybe protect the rim a little bit better. Do I think we're going to do it 70 possessions a game like the Pacers do. No, that's just not the way that teams really go about playing defense now. And I don't think that I would want somebody probably more like Lamont Butler, honestly, to be the head of the snake if we were really going to do that. Not to shift into NBA talk too much, but this team doesn't have the Andrew Nimhard or Benedict Mathurin or some of these like big, really high level wing defenders that can pick up a point guard 94 feet. I wouldn't feel comfortable right now throwing one of Kentucky's guards into that situation where you're trying to stay with Boogie Fland for 94 feet, or you're trying to stay with, go through and name the, Aiden Holloway or, some of these other, some of the best guards in the SEC next year. That wouldn't really be a situation I'd want to be in. So no, I don't think that you'll see it certainly to the Pacers level, which is at 100 on the 0 to 100 scale. But do I think that just because Coach Pope likes mixing things up some, will Kentucky rate probably in the top half of high major teams in percentage of possessions that they press? It's a lot of P's. It's hard to say. I think that you could see 5% of possessions maybe next year where they mix in some full court pressure, even maybe whether that's kind of like a 2-2-1 zone press or you just going man to man. I think you'll continue to see some of that, but no, I still don't really like the idea of doing it a ton.
The zone is so when I think about how they could do pressing, I think Pope's idea would be not to do the Pacers thing where they're legitimately trying to turn the ball over every time, no matter miss or mostly makes, but even after a miss, they'll still try and press some. So I think they have the personnel and the depth to do a press, if they wanted to do it more often. I like the idea, like you mentioned, of a zone press. I think that could work from the perspective of, hey, let's see if we can burn off 8 seconds.
Exactly. I'm glad you said that.
Let's see if we can milk 8 seconds of every offensive possession from them. And hell, maybe 3 times throughout the whole game, we'll get a steal too. We can generate some more possessions for us. I think if you do a zone press, you're gonna have the length, the size, the physicality, the shot block, the rim protection. You don't have a Lamont Butler, but you don't need that if you're just kind of almost doing it as a token press.
You're soft and you're backing up with the ball and
make you guys pass the ball around us so that by the time you're getting into your action, at the earliest there's 22 seconds left and you're just kind of making it so life's a little bit more difficult. So I think that is a situation that I do actually think that Pope will maybe look to go to or maybe embrace a little bit more. How much do they do that? I have no idea. I honestly, 3% sounds high from last season. That it almost felt like they really didn't press too much at all. So, but if they can get to that 5%, 10%, and maybe make it so you can try and just steal some extra possessions, I'm all for it. So I think they had the personnel to do it. That'll be an interesting question. That'll be something that I'll try and ask Pope whenever we start doing more of these interviews and stuff, for the players be like, hey, so how do you think, your thoughts on pressing and all that? But I think they have the personnel to make it all happen. Like you said, I don't want them to be a up in your face, try and press the whole time, because I don't think that will work, honestly, with without having a guy like a Lamont Butler, Lowe and Ortega. They're all quick, like Jasper, Colin, Chandler, Aberdeen. All these guys are quick, but I just don't trust them like I would someone like Lamont Butler, who was actively doing that. He probably made all of those 3% of those possessions was probably just Lamont Butler,
just him,
for 94 feet. So yeah, I do see them doing more pressing, but not like the Pacers. It'll be more like a soft thing. Okay, let's just try and eat up some clock here and see if we can't scare the other team into making some mistakes.
Well, you said it perfectly, and I was going to bring it up, and and you were smart enough to beat me to the punch. I'm glad that you said it the way you did, because I think that there's a misconception, especially among college basketball fans and watchers, and this probably stems from the way things used to be, and especially if you're a Kentucky fan, and the way Pitino's teams pressed some and things people think about a press as speeding the game up. And honestly, now that's the opposite is true. Teams don't press now to speed the game up. Teams press now to slow the game down. And then that's what you're talking about with some of that token pressure where you're pretty soft, or you're not really even trying to force a turnover. You just want to make them, like, hey, let's see if they have to make 4 passes to get the ball into the front court. Then they kind of have to resettle. They have to look over the sideline, call a play. Now all of a sudden, oh crap, there's 19 on the shot clock. Like, we only have, maybe one ball reversal. And now, like, it's time to come set a ball screen and we have to go. So like, and I think that's a misconception among a lot of people where they don't realize that, generally speaking, now a press is a slowdown tactic, not a speed up tactic. And I think that would be a way, as you mentioned, that Kentucky would use it, is like, hey, we don't want to have to guard you for 30 seconds. Can we guard you for 18 seconds? Can we guard you for 20 seconds? And especially with the personnel, I think it lends itself certainly more to that style than like the old school, like 40 minutes of hell sort of stuff. Like that's not what it's going to be.
And like, just for reference, like, of the 3 Tulane games that you can find on YouTube, they liked to do a little bit of that. Like, Cam Williams, he knows, he's been in that situation. Like, he has experience doing kind of that exact same stuff as, like, kind of being the guy in the middle that's just 6'8" with a 7-foot wingspan, like, longer than everyone else, so he can make it, just so you can't pass the ball through him. Like, you just have to go around, and you have to kind of, like, you have to do 3 or 4 passes in the backcourt before you can even get across half court. That's 10 seconds right there. So I think that's kind of an area, if they're going to press, I think that's probably what you're going to see. But I do kind of hope they do break that out a little bit, because like I've talked about, I think they do have the personnel to make it happen. Maybe more than 3%. That would be nice. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Any other thoughts on that one? Or you want to move on?
Nope. Last question. Let's do it.
So this is kind of this is also from For Love of the Game, but we're probably both like misinterpreting what we were trying to say. But basically, he was saying, like, I've mentioned on Zoom Action how I've seen Cam Williams and Dioubate in particular, like, really good at, like, just being aware on defense. Like, you can tell that they are, like, their heads are always shifting back and forth. They're always got a hand on their man. They've always got another hand kind of like pointing out. They're not necessarily like calling out the opposing team's offense, because like Cam Williams, I don't even think he knows how to do that. He was 17 years old for half the season last year. Dioubate might, but they're really good at just knowing where, like, the situational awareness on defense, I think, is really good. So basically, he wanted, For the Love of the Game, wants to see, can we show an example of that? So I pulled up the one I was trying to watch I found one from Mo Dioubate here from when Alabama was playing St. Mary's in the NCAA tournament here. And actually, Brandon, I'm going to let you riff for a second while I figure out how to do this without crashing my computer. But just your general thoughts on just, I don't know, whatever the hell I just said. You can
talk. I think that what you'll see with guys like Mo Dioubate, Cam Williams, and why I'm so excited about those, and honestly, I'd even go down to Denzel Aberdeen as well. Like, these are bigger, more athletic pieces than what you saw last year. I mean, like, I know Kobe Brea was 6'7", but like, until late in the year, he really had no interest in being a part of anything defensively. Then he actually got decent towards the end of the year.
Credit, he did.
And then some of the, like, Jackson Robinson, even when he was healthy, he's like 6'4" and pretty skinny. Like, he had some defensive ability, but he's not Denzel Aberdeen, where he's 6'5", 195 pounds, and like really gets after it on that end of the floor. Cam Williams, again, was another guy like Jayden Quaintance, was 17 for like most, if not all, of his freshman season. Cam Williams averaged 1.1 blocks per game last year. Like, I don't know if we're giving enough credit for like what he did as a shot blocker from the wing last year, because he's 6'8", athletic, has physicality to him. So, I've talked about it with, not just Jayden Quaintance standing down there and maybe being the best shot blocker in college basketball next season, but you're going to see guys like Mo Dioubate, Cam Williams, Denzel Aberdeen, Otega Owe, even, like, these guys are going to block shots from the perimeter. And then the other thing too is rim protection starts with being good defensively on the perimeter. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, if you talk too much about your rim protection, it probably means that your perimeter defense stinks, because it means that you're in too many situations for it. And I think Kentucky's going to have good rim protection, but I also think we're going to be a heck of a lot better on the perimeter, and we're not going to have to get to that level quite as much as we did last season. And where Cam Williams and Dioubate specifically come into that is just the versatility. I mean, it's a word we talked about, or we've said a lot on this show, but it's the nature of this Kentucky basketball team, where, this clip that you're going to show, Zach, Dioubate switches twice in this play. He switches the ball screen onto a point guard as they get downhill, and then he does a really good job of waiting until the ball kind of reverses back. He's not freaking out to switch back, because anybody can guard anybody for a possession. Ball goes away, they switch back, and now he's in a position, and he's so physical there, holding off like a 7'1", big old Serbian dude, probably for St. Mary's.
Balkan.
Yeah, another Balkan, and he probably played for
Mega Basket, yeah.
Yeah, Mega Basket. But like, he just holds him off with like one arm, and then kind of goes up and gets the rebound with the other. Like Mo Dioubate is 6'7". It's not like he's doing this because he's some, monster out there, but he's so strong. And I think that's something that you see for him. Like, I don't know how much he can bench press and things like that. I don't really care. But like, this dude on the basketball court is really, really strong. Like, he holds people off at a high level. He's physical. People bounce off of him even when he's on offense. And I think that's where you're going to really see Mo Dioubate come in, of his positional versatility, the way he rebounds, the way he'll protect the rim some. I'm really excited about how he'll fit in kind of as a quarterback on the, or middle linebacker, safety, I guess the better defensive terminology, for what he'll do for this Kentucky team.
Yeah, and it goes back to kind of the very first question, is like, what stood up to you on film? It was stuff like this from Dioubate. Yeah. Like, I think he's going to be able to shore up Kentucky's pick and roll defense. Like, he's going to be able to make it so just significantly. Him alone is going to make things just so much easier for Jaland Lowe specifically, who will probably get picked on a little bit in the pick and roll. But you're not going to be able to attack a pick and roll if Diabate's the second man with Jaland Lowe. But he's like, it just goes back to what I was saying with the situational awareness. Like, it's small stuff, it feels like, but it's important stuff, because this switch right here down at the bottom, the off-ball switch, Dioubate says, look, Aiden Holloway, you're on the 7-footer. You got to get out here. I'm going to switch down low here. That's the only reason that Alabama gets this rebound, is because of that switch right there. So it's just small things like that. Like, you get yourself in positive, or like, situations that are more beneficial for you on defense here, where you're just not going to be able to get around. Like, Aiden Holloway doesn't do a great job of getting around that screen at all. But guess what? You've got Mo Dioubate hanging out down there in the bottom, and he knows that guy's not going to shoot over him. So just play, wait out, play your defense, do that. Like, but I've also seen Mo Dioubate hard hedge all the way out to the logo out there, and like, he will ball deny, and he's quick enough that he can recover and not really make it much of an issue. So, and then with Cam Williams as well, like, kind of going back to what I was talking about with the zone pressure stuff, Tulane ran a lot of zone in general. Like, that zone, the pressure, the trapping press would like kind of sink back into just a zone in general. So Cam Williams he's someone who's always kind of aware of what's going on around him. I think that he was really good in that zone defense, because he's just so long and he's aware. Like, it's just hard to you can't make many skip passes like through a guy like Cam Williams. So I don't know how much zone defense Pope's going to use next season. Probably none. But I think some of the traits that Cam Williams had at playing zone at Tulane will translate just in terms of not getting lost, essentially. Like, just kind of being in the moment at all times and understanding where the ball is, where you need to be, things like that. But this was a play that I just saw from when I was trying to comb through looking for clips for this. This is one I saw where I was like, okay, that's kind of what that was what Kentucky was lacking last year, was just small stuff like this. So I don't really have anything else other on top of those. Brandon, you got anything else you want to add to that little note there?
No, not necessarily. I think that we got a lot of good questions here, and certainly appreciate everybody chiming in. It's probably something we'll continue to do in the future. We can always pull up some clips like this, and it's always fun to dive more into things. But I think we'll just continue to say it. We want to keep putting videos like this out because I think we're all really excited about this Kentucky basketball team, and that there's continued to be some more preseason rankings put out. And I think Kentucky's going to go into the year, pretty much a consensus top 10 team in the country, and that means that we should be excited about the season because I think we're just going to only see improvements going forward from year one to year two, and hopefully even going into the future of the Coach Pope era. So as long as everybody continues to subscribe to the KSR YouTube channel, we'll keep pumping out the content because we enjoy doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. One other quick note I wanted to add about Dioubate because I wrote it down. I just forgot to mention it. Alabama was 11-2 last season when he scores 10 or more points. It's just
I like that
out there. So I don't think he's going to be a big offensive guy, but whenever he plays well on offense, the defense is always going to be there. So you're just kind of getting an extra scoop of ice cream on top there. Just a really big fan of him. I think it's going to be so much fun to watch next year.